Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
Thomas stood at the window of his sprawling estate, overlooking the meticulous gardens that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. It was on one such serene morning that his new help, an Elorixie named Lyria, arrived. Her species, known for their grace and slender, luminous figures, had recently initiated peaceful exchanges with humans. As she approached, her movements were fluid, almost floating, a stark contrast to Thomas's grounded, assertive strides as he went out to meet her. "Welcome to Earth, Lyria," Thomas greeted, extending a hand, unsure of the protocol but willing to bridge the gap. Lyria's thin lips curled into a gentle smile, her hand meeting his. "Thank you, Thomas. I am here to assist and learn. I must admit, I'm curious about your abilities and how you'll find our ways here," Thomas confessed as they walked back to the house. His tone was friendly, laced with a genuine intrigue about this venture into interspecies cooperation. "I share your curiosity," Lyria replied, her voice a melodic whisper. "Our cultures are quite different, but I hope to manage your home as effectively as you would." They entered the large, open kitchen where the scent of fresh coffee filled the air. Thomas showed her the automated home system, the culinary gadgets, and the recycling units, all standard, yet somehow new through Lyria's inquisitive eyes. "This is the kitchen where you'll prepare meals. Are you familiar with human cuisine?" Thomas asked, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee in hand. "Only in theory," Lyria confessed, her gaze fixating on the coffee machine. "I studied your foods and methods, but practical experience lacks." "Well, then, let's start with making coffee," Thomas suggested, stepping closer to the machine. "It's a human essential," Lyria nodded, watching intently as Thomas explained the measurements and settings. He handed her the scoop, and she mimicked his actions with precision. "Coffee making seems simple yet complex," she observed, handing the freshly brewed cup to Thomas. "It's one of those little human contradictions," Thomas chuckled, accepting the mug. "Taste it." Lyria sipped cautiously, her face momentarily revealing surprise before smoothing into an expression of satisfaction. "It's robust, with many layers, just like us humans," Thomas remarked, leading her through to the living areas to continue the tour. Each room has its theme and functionality, which keeps life here interesting and comfortable. As they moved from room to room, Thomas explained his expectations and the daily routines. Lyria listened, her bright eyes missing nothing, absorbing every detail. "Your last housekeeper left big shoes to fill," Lyria mentioned as they arranged the tools and cleaning agents in the utility room. Thomas sighed, a bit of nostalgia in his gaze. "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell was remarkable, but she retired to be with her grandchildren. I hope you'll find your own way here." "I intend to," Lyria assured him, her confidence gentle yet firm. The rest of the day was spent in learning and laughter, with Thomas showing Lyria the grounds and discussing her duties. By the time the sun began to set, a mutual respect had been forged between the human and his alien maid. As they stood watching the twilight spread across the sky, Thomas felt a stirring of excitement about the possibilities this new companionship might bring. "I look forward to working with you, Lyria," he said, offering a smile that spoke of new beginnings. "And you," Lyria responded, her eyes reflecting the last light of day. "I believe this will be an enriching experience for us both." Thus began their journey, under the vast, shared sky, on a planet teeming with life and now, more than ever, possibilities. The morning sun filtered through the vast windows of Thomas's estate, casting a warm glow on the sleek kitchen surfaces. Lyria, now somewhat familiar with the layout, busied herself with preparing breakfast. Thomas entered the kitchen, still adjusting to the presence of another being so early in his routine. "Good morning, Lyria. What's on the menu today?" Thomas asked, intrigued by the array of ingredients laid out on the counter. "Good morning, Thomas. I thought I would attempt to prepare pancakes, a dish I learned about in your food data archives," Lyria replied, her tone mixed with concentration and curiosity. "Ah, pancakes. A classic choice. Need a hand?" Thomas offered, rolling up his sleeves. "Yes, please." The process seems simple, yet precision appears key, Lyria observed, handing Thomas the flour. Together, they mixed the ingredients, Lyria meticulously measuring and Thomas offering tips on consistency and timing. The kitchen filled with the sweet aroma of cooking batter, and the occasional laughter over spilled milk or a pancake flipped too soon. "You're getting the hang of it," Thomas noted as Lyria successfully flipped a golden brown pancake. "It's all about the timing." "Yes, I am beginning to understand the rhythm of it," Lyria said, a hint of pride in her voice. As they sat down to eat, Thomas decided to delve deeper into understanding his alien maid. "Lyria, tell me about Elorixi cuisine. What are your traditional dishes?" Lyria's eyes lit up at the question. "Our food is quite different. We consume mainly vegetation, but it's prepared in a way that enhances its natural flavors. We have a dish similar to this," she gestured at the pancakes, "but it's made with a type of ground root and has a savory profile." "Sounds interesting. Maybe you could prepare it sometime." "I'd love to try it," Thomas suggested, genuinely interested. "I would be pleased to share a part of my culture with you," Lyria smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. Breakfast continued with discussions about their planet's agricultural practices. Thomas shared how Earth's farming had evolved with technology, and Lyria described the Elorixi's methods of using natural enzymes to enrich their soil. Post-breakfast, Thomas led Lyria to his home office to show her the collection of books and artifacts he had amassed from around the world. Each of these items has a story from Earth's many cultures. "I believe understanding diversity is crucial." Lyria was fascinated, touching the spines of books with reverence, her gaze lingering on a particularly old map. "This diversity is valuable. On Elorix, our regions are united under one philosophy, so such variety is rare. It's what makes human culture complex and at times challenging," Thomas explained, watching her reactions with interest. "Complexity breeds depth, much like your coffee," Lyria noted, linking their morning's lesson to the conversation. Thomas chuckled. "Exactly. Speaking of which, how are you finding Earth's gravity and atmosphere?" "I imagine it's quite different from Elorix. It is heavier here, but I am adapting." "Your home's environment controls help considerably," Lyria responded, her tone appreciative. Their day progressed with more shared tasks, like gardening, where Thomas showed Lyria how to prune roses and manage the hydroponic vegetable garden. The physicality of Earth gardening surprised Lyria, accustomed to her planet's less hands-on approaches. As they planted a new row of vegetables, Thomas found himself increasingly impressed by Lyria's quick learning and thoughtful questions. "You're a natural at this," he complimented. Lyria looked up from the soil, her face bright. "I am enjoying the learning process immensely, Thomas. Thank you for being so patient and such a good teacher." Their conversation meandered through various topics, each learning from the other, bridging their worlds one story, one lesson at a time. As the sun began to set, they cleaned their tools, the day's end marking another chapter of mutual respect and understanding in the book of their interstellar cultural exchange. A few weeks had passed since Lyria's arrival, and the mansion felt more vibrant and lively than ever. This evening was particularly serene, with a cool breeze whispering through the open windows, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. Thomas was in his study, reviewing documents, when Lyria knocked gently on the doorframe. "Thomas, may I have a moment?" Lyria's voice was calm, but Thomas could sense an underlying importance in her request. "Of course, Lyria. What's on your mind?" Thomas set aside his papers, motioning for her to take a seat across from him. "I've been meaning to ask you about Earth's music. I've read about its varieties and complexities, but I find it somewhat challenging to grasp its emotional essence through text alone," Lyria explained, her luminous eyes reflecting a genuine thirst for knowledge. "That's a great point. Music isn't just heard, it's felt. Let's listen to some classics together. What do you say?" Thomas proposed, already rising to fetch his vintage record player. "I would like that very much," Lyria replied, her face lighting up with anticipation. Thomas selected several records ranging from Beethoven to the Beatles, explaining each choice as he set the vinyl to play. The first notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony filled the room, and he watched Lyria's reaction closely. "The structure is complex, but listen to the emotions carried in each note," Thomas said, gesturing towards the speakers as the symphony built up. Lyria closed her eyes, absorbing the layers of sound. It's powerful, almost like a storm rolling in, she observed, her voice soft and thoughtful. Exactly. Music can stir up strong emotions, much like a storm can stir the sea, Thomas agreed, pleased with her analogy. As the evening progressed, they explored different genres. Each track seemed to open up new avenues of discussion about Earth's cultures and emotions. Lyria was particularly taken by a blues album, noting the depth of sorrow and longing in the vocals. It speaks of loss, but also carries a strange comfort, Lyria mused. It's the beauty of the blues. It connects through shared pain, Thomas explained, finding the conversation surprisingly intimate. The record player eventually fell silent, and they sat discussing their own life experiences. Lyria shared more about Ellerix, her family, and her hopes for her time on Earth. Thomas listened intently, realizing how much he had come to value her presence and perspectives. The conversation shifted subtly from cultural exchange to personal revelations. Lyria, I've really enjoyed this evening. It's nice to share these parts of human culture with someone so eager to learn, Thomas admitted, his voice carrying a warmth he hadn't expected to feel. And I am grateful to be here. To learn from you, Lyria responded, her gaze meeting his with a sincerity that made his heart skip a beat. In a moment of boldness, perhaps driven by the emotive power of the music, Thomas reached across the space between them, taking her hand. There's much more to share. If you're interested. Lyria's hand trembled slightly, but she didn't withdraw. Instead, she nodded, her smile gentle. I am, very much. Their eyes locked, and the air seemed charged with a new energy. Slowly, almost hesitantly, Thomas leaned forward, and Lyria met him halfway. Their first kiss was tentative, a soft brush of lips that spoke of mutual respect and burgeoning feelings. As they pulled apart, the vulnerability in Lyria's expression mirrored Thomas's own. This is new for me, she whispered. For me too, Thomas confessed, feeling a mix of exhilaration and fear. But we can explore this together. Lyria nodded, her smile returning. Together. The night ended with an unspoken agreement that something significant had shifted between them. They were no longer just a human and his alien maid. They were two beings exploring the vast universe of connection, bound by shared music and uncharted emotions. The days following their first kiss were filled with a new, palpable energy. Thomas and Lyria found themselves sharing more than just meals and music. They shared stories, laughter, and occasional, lingering touches that spoke volumes. It was during one of their evening walks through the garden that their relationship deepened further. You've made these paths come alive for me in ways I hadn't expected, Thomas said, gesturing to the blooming flowers around them. The sun was setting, casting a golden light that made the garden seem almost magical. Lyria, walking beside him, watched a butterfly flit from one flower to another. And you have shown me the beauty in small things, in moments that I might have overlooked, she replied, her voice tinged with warmth. As they reached the garden's central gazebo, Thomas paused and turned to face her. Lyria, I've been thinking about us, about this connection we're exploring. It feels like we're on the edge of something new, something profound. Lyria met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the hues of the twilight. I feel it too, Thomas. It's like discovering a new star in a familiar galaxy. It's always been there, but we've only just seen its light. Encouraged by her words, Thomas took a step closer. I want to explore this further with you, if you're willing. I am, Lyria affirmed, her hand finding his. With a gentle pull, Thomas led her into the gazebo, their steps synchronized. He stopped and faced her, their bodies inches apart. May I? He asked softly, his hands poised to touch her face. Lyria nodded, and Thomas brushed a strand of her luminescent hair behind her ear. The contact sent a shiver through them both, a silent acknowledgement of the desire that had been building. Thomas leaned in slowly, his lips meeting hers once more. This kiss was different from the first, confident, deeper, a mutual exploration of emotion and sensation. Lyria responded with equal fervor, her arms winding around his neck, pulling him closer. As they parted, both breathless, Thomas smiled. I've never felt anything like this, Nor have I, Lyria breathed. Her cheeks flushed with a glow that wasn't just from the twilight. They moved to sit on the gazebo bench, intertwined yet speaking softly. "What are we doing, Thomas?" Lyria asked, not in doubt, but in wonder. "We're learning about each other, I think. Not just as a man and an alien, but as two souls drawn together despite the vastness of space that once separated us," Thomas explained, his hand tracing patterns on her arm. "It's strange, isn't it? How two people from different worlds can find not just understanding but something deeper," Lyria mused. "It's the most beautiful kind of strange," Thomas agreed. "I want to keep exploring it, keep exploring you. All of this feels right." They spent the rest of the evening in the gazebo, talking about dreams, fears, and possibilities. The night grew deeper and the stars brighter, a perfect backdrop to the new world they were weaving together. As the chill of night settled, Thomas draped his jacket over Lyria's shoulders. "Let's go inside," he suggested, standing and offering her his hand. "Yes, let's," Lyria agreed, her smile radiant. They walked back to the house, their steps light, their hearts lighter. The night was quiet, but for them, it was alive with the sounds of a beginning, the melody of a bond that promised to grow deeper with each passing day. Morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room where Thomas and Lyria shared a quiet breakfast. Their conversations, once filled with the excitement of discovery, had deepened into comfortable silences and meaningful exchanges. Today, however, Lyria seemed unusually pensive. Thomas noticed her distraction. "Everything okay, Lyria?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern as he passed her the fruit bowl. Lyria looked up, her expression a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "Thomas, I have something important to tell you, and I am not sure how you will react." Thomas set down his coffee, his full attention now on her. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, Lyria met his gaze steadily. "I am pregnant, Thomas, with twins." The news hit Thomas like a wave, leaving him momentarily speechless. "Pregnant? Twins?" he finally managed, his voice a blend of shock and awe. "Yes, it is quite rare for Ellerixi to conceive twins, and even rarer still given our unique situation," Lyria explained, her voice soft but firm. Thomas reached across the table, taking her hand. "Wow, I mean, that's incredible, Lyria. How are you feeling about this?" Lyria's smile was tentative but genuine. "I am overwhelmed but also happy. Our connection, it seems, is more profound than we realized." Thomas chuckled nervously, still processing the news. "This is beyond anything I could have imagined. But you're right, we have something special. And I'm here, Lyria, whatever you need." The reality of their situation began to settle in as they discussed the implications. "We'll need to make some changes around here. Prepare for the arrival of our children," Thomas said, the word children feeling foreign yet fitting. "I have read about human parenting, but experiencing it will be entirely different, especially with you by my side," Lyria said, squeezing his hand. "I suppose I should start reading up on Ellerixi child rearing then," Thomas replied, a light-hearted attempt to ease some tension. They spent the morning making lists of what they would need and the adjustments to the house that would be necessary. Thomas suggested converting one of the guest rooms into a nursery. "Should we design it to favor Earth styles, or more like Ellerixi?" Thomas pondered aloud as they toured the potential room. "Perhaps a blend of both? Our children will be a mix of our worlds. Their room should reflect that," Lyria proposed, her eyes scanning the room thoughtfully. "I like that idea. We'll make it a place where both our cultures blend harmoniously," Thomas agreed, feeling a surge of excitement at the project. As the day progressed, their initial shock transformed into a shared enthusiasm. They sketched ideas and researched together, occasionally pausing to appreciate the surreal turn their lives had taken. By late afternoon, they had outlined a basic plan. "I think we're ready for this, Lyria," Thomas said, his earlier apprehension replaced by determination. Lyria looked up from her sketches, her face serene. "I believe we are, Thomas, because we are together in this." The chapter closed with them sitting side by side, sketching out their future with tentative strokes and bold dreams, united by the unexpected but joyous twist of fate. News of Lyria's pregnancy, as expected, didn't stay contained within the walls of Thomas's estate for long. Word quickly spread through Thomas's social circles and soon reached the local Elorixi community as well. As the first human Elorixi pairing to conceive, their story became a topic of fascination, speculation, and, occasionally, criticism. One afternoon, Thomas and Lyria decided to visit a local cafe, hoping to enjoy a brief escape from their ever-expanding to-do lists. As they entered, conversations hushed, and curious glances followed them. Thomas felt the weight of the stares and leaned toward Lyria. "Seems like we're the main attraction today," he murmured, giving her a reassuring smile. Lyria nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "Yes, I can feel it too. They're curious, and perhaps confused." They took a seat by the window, and Thomas gestured for the waiter. As they waited, an older man approached their table. He looked at Thomas, then at Lyria, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me," the man said, clearing his throat. "I don't mean to intrude, but are you the couple we've been hearing about?" Thomas shared a glance with Lyria, then nodded. "Yes, that's us," he replied, his tone calm but firm. "Can we help you?" The man looked slightly uncomfortable but continued. "Well, it's just, I find it remarkable, that's all. I never thought I'd see a human and an Elorixi starting a family together. It's a new world, isn't it?" Lyria's face softened. "Yes, it is," she said, her voice carrying both warmth and conviction. "But it's also a natural one. Our connection wasn't planned, but it feels right." The man nodded slowly, his expression shifting to one of quiet respect. "Congratulations, both of you. I'm sure it can't be easy, but you're opening doors. Best of luck." After he left, Thomas exhaled, relieved. "That wasn't so bad. Not everyone will understand, but perhaps we can show them there's nothing to fear," Lyria replied, her hand brushing his across the table. Just as they were beginning to relax, Thomas's friend and neighbor, Sarah, entered the cafe. She spotted them and made her way over, her expression a mix of surprise and delight. "Thomas, I just heard the news," Sarah exclaimed, pulling him into a quick hug before turning to Lyria. "And you must be Lyria. Congratulations." "Thank you, Sarah," Lyria replied, smiling. Sarah slid into the seat next to Thomas. "I have to say, I'm thrilled for you both. But you do know this is going to cause a stir, right? Not everyone is as open-minded as they should be." Thomas nodded, glancing at Lyria. "We've already felt some of that, but we're ready for it. We're not letting other people's judgments cloud what we have." Sarah leaned in, her tone lowering. "You two are brave. And honestly, you're an inspiration. People need to see that love transcends species, boundaries, everything." Lyria tilted her head, curiosity shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. Your support means more than you might realize." After Sarah left, Thomas and Lyria stayed at the cafe a little longer, savoring the small victory of feeling accepted, if only by a few. On the way home, Thomas looked over at Lyria. "I didn't expect this much attention, but I'm glad we have friends like Sarah who stand by us." Lyria smiled, her hand finding his. "As long as we are together, I believe we can face any scrutiny. We've chosen each other, and that is what matters most." Thomas squeezed her hand. "You're right. Let them look, let them wonder. We're living our truth, and nothing can take that away from us." Hand in hand, they walked back home, the strength of their bond evident in every step. The preparations for the twins' arrival took on a life of their own, transforming the usually quiet mansion into a bustling space filled with plans, ideas, and new beginnings. Thomas and Lyria spent countless hours planning, designing, and crafting the nursery, determined to make it a perfect blend of Earth and Elorixi culture. One morning, Thomas emerged from his study holding a paint catalog. "All right, so we need to pick a color for the nursery walls. Any thoughts?" he asked, setting the catalog on the table in front of Lyria. She examined the options, her fingers lingering over soft greens and blues. "I like these shades. They remind me of Elorix's forests. I think our children would feel at home surrounded by such colors." Thomas nodded, picturing it. "I love that idea. Earth has those shades too. Nature, calm, growth. It's perfect. They chose a gentle green as the base, but as they planned out the wall murals, Lyria suggested adding stars. In Elorixi tradition, stars represent guidance. Perhaps we could paint a constellation on one wall, a reminder of where we both come from. Thomas smiled, reaching for a pencil to sketch out the concept. That's beautiful, Lyria. Maybe we could even blend some Earth constellations with Elorixi ones, our children's own night sky. The more they discussed, the more ideas sprang to life. They decided on a starry mural with a tree at the center, its roots winding down to represent Earth and its branches stretching toward the stars, a symbol of Elorix. The nursery became their canvas, a testament to the merging of their worlds. As they painted and decorated, Thomas paused, watching Lyria as she carefully outlined a constellation. You're going to be an amazing mother. You know that? Lyria looked over, a faint glow in her cheeks. I hope so. This is new territory for me, as it is for you. But I trust that together, we'll give our children all they need. Absolutely, Thomas agreed, moving beside her to add a few stars to her constellation. I think learning together will be the best part of this journey. They spent the day arranging furniture, setting up the cribs, and adding small touches. By evening, they had finished most of the nursery, and Thomas looked around, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome warmth. It's really coming together, he said, admiring their work. This room, it's filled with so much of us. Lyria stepped back, studying the room with a look of quiet pride. It's a reflection of everything we are and everything we hope to be for them. I can almost imagine the twins here, growing up surrounded by the love we've put into this space. Thomas nodded, a sense of peace washing over him. It feels right. The following week, they attended a local parenting class together. As they walked in, Thomas glanced at Lyria, amused. I have to admit, I never thought I'd be in a class learning about diaper changing. Lyria tilted her head, intrigued. Diaper changing is unique to human infants, yes? Yes, but it's a skill we'll need, Thomas replied, his grin widening as they found seats near the front. The class turned out to be a mix of humorous mishaps and valuable lessons. They practiced swaddling techniques, took turns with diaper-changing simulations, and learned about infant sleep cycles. Lyria's curiosity was boundless, and her thoughtful questions had other attendees marveling at her unique perspective. After the class, Thomas shook his head, laughing as they walked out. All right, so I'm not as skilled at diapering as I thought I'd be. You will improve with practice, Lyria assured him with a warm smile. As will I. We have each other to rely on, after all. They continued their preparations in a shared rhythm, each decision and task strengthening the bond they shared. Back at the mansion, they spent evenings discussing names, trying to find ones that held meaning in both their cultures. One night, as they settled into the living room with name books scattered around them, Lyria looked up. I can feel them, Thomas. They're growing stronger each day. He reached over, placing a hand on her abdomen, feeling a faint, fluttering sensation. It's incredible, he whispered, his expression filled with wonder. Lyria placed her hand over his, their fingers entwined. This is our family, Thomas. Our future. As they sat together, hands clasped and hearts full, they knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The journey wasn't without its challenges, but each step brought them closer to the life they had chosen together, a life now shared with the children who would soon fill their home. The day had finally arrived. Thomas paced the halls of his home, his heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. The soft, comforting lights they'd installed in the nursery were now on, filling the room with a gentle glow. Medical equipment was set up, and a local doctor familiar with Elorixi physiology was there, guiding Lyria through the final stages of labor. Thomas, Lyria's voice, though weak, held a note of calm that immediately drew him to her side. He stepped forward, taking her hand. I'm here, Lyria. You're doing amazing. Lyria looked up at him, her usual composed demeanor softened with exhaustion and something more profound, a quiet, radiant strength. Thank you, Thomas. I feel ready. He gave her hand a squeeze. We're ready. All three of you are going to be fine. The room was filled with murmurs of the doctor and nurse, guiding her through each step. Lyria gripped his hand tightly, her breathing focused, her gaze occasionally locking onto his as if to draw strength from him. Thomas stayed close, whispering words of encouragement, his own heartbeat racing in sync with each of her efforts. Finally, the air filled with the sound of a soft cry. The doctor gently handed the first newborn into Lyria's arms, a tiny bundle swaddled in the soft fabric they had picked out together. It's incredible, Thomas whispered, barely able to process the sight of their child. The baby's skin held a unique tone, a blend of human warmth and Elarixi's faint luminescence. Lyria looked down at their child, her eyes brimming with awe. "Our daughter," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Before long, their second child arrived, a boy, and Thomas felt his heart swell as he took the small, delicate bundle into his own arms. He looked at Lyria, the weight of their journey settling around them in the most beautiful way imaginable. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and relief. Lyria managed a tired smile, reaching out to touch his hand. "Yes, Thomas, we did." The room quieted as they sat together, their children held gently in their arms. Thomas marveled at the twins, their tiny hands grasping the air, their eyes blinking as they began to adjust to the world. After the doctor and nurse left, assuring them that all was well, Thomas and Lyria sat in the nursery, taking in the peacefulness of the moment. The twins rested quietly, wrapped in blankets that reflected the soft greens and blues they had chosen, surrounded by the starry mural on the walls. "This is our family," Thomas said softly, gazing at Lyria with a deep sense of contentment. "Our new life." Lyria looked over at him, her expression a mixture of joy and serenity. "A life that began with a single step and grew into something neither of us could have foreseen." He reached over, touching her cheek. "I'm grateful every day for that step, for meeting you, for all of this." As they sat there, side by side, the weight of their journey and the beauty of their present filled the space around them. The night sky outside twinkled, mirroring the stars on the nursery walls, and Thomas felt a sense of completeness he had never known. "We have so much to teach them," he said, looking down at their children with a tender smile. "About Earth, about Elarix, about everything we've learned together." Lyria nodded, brushing her fingers gently over their daughter's cheek. "And they will teach us too. I believe they will help us see things anew, just as we have for each other." They stayed like that for hours, talking in soft voices about the future, about dreams they had for their children and the adventures they would share. Every so often, they exchanged a quiet, knowing smile, a reminder of the love that had grown between them, a love that had created these two lives. As dawn began to break, painting the sky with gentle hues of pink and orange, Thomas and Lyria looked up, watching the first light fill the room. "It's a new day," Thomas whispered, squeezing her hand. "Yes," Lyria replied, resting her head on his shoulder, her eyes still on their children. "A new beginning, for all of us." Together, they sat in peaceful silence, watching the sunrise and embracing the journey that lay ahead, surrounded by the warmth of their shared love and the promise of the family they had created.